And you believe in banning abortions, right?
I'm pro-life, yes.
Even in cases of incest and rape?
Yes.
Why?
Because this is a sort of a fundamental definitional question. If you believe life begins at conception, then regardless of the source of the life, it now has an independent interest in life. So that is not to minimize the tremendous evil of rape or incest. I believe rapists should be executed, frankly, or chemically castrated at best. But that's sort of a different question from the independent source of life and whether this, again, it gets back to definitions. And this conversation tends to be either you're on one side of that or the other. If you don't believe life begins at conception, then obviously you believe abortion is acceptable in a wide variety of circumstances. If you believe it's an independent life deserving of protection, then you believe it's an independent life deserving of protection.
Lauren, what do you think about that? I'm just as a woman.
I think that a woman should be able to choose to do what she wants to do wherever she decides to do it. I believe
completely over her head. And I always find it interesting every single time the pro-lifers and pro-choicers argue and debate whether or not abortion is bad or good, that the pro-choicers always say rape or incest. They always use that. That's the go-to when we know that majority of abortions are not because of that. And you can correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong or not, but I'm pretty certain that less than 1% of abortions are because of rape and incest. They just use that because they want to justify. Like she just said, I believe that women should be able to have the choice to do whatever they want. So it's not even about something bad happening to them. It's just about women being able to just do whatever.
Lauren, what do you think about that? I'm just as a woman.
I think that a woman should be able to choose to do what she wants to do wherever she decides to do it. I believe that women should be able to abort babies if they want to, if they feel like that's what they need to do.
Do you have a time limit on that, out of curiosity?
I mean, I think it should happen earlier on if it were me making a decision for myself. But I think it's up to the woman and what she's personally experiencing and what she personally went through. I really think it's a per person thing. That's why I think it's crazy when you have like these structures and these like people who are not in that situation making the decision for the woman of what you can and can't do, because it's very like per person. My situation might be different than another woman who's sitting next to me.
Right. So again,
it doesn't matter. This is for the betterment of society. Just look at right now. We have the lowest birth rate we've ever had in the history of the United States. It's at like a 1.6 or 1.7. That's how many children are being born, per woman. That's insane. That's why our birth rates are declining, and that's why people are dying faster than they're being born. It's ridiculous because we have women out here using abortion as birth control. So they're choosing to purposely not have children so they can just have fun.
This is sort of the definitional issue that we're talking about, because you're talking about what a woman should be allowed to do. And what I'm talking about is the definition of personhood of the separate person inside the woman. I think that what I'd push on is why do you personally believe that a woman should have an abortion earlier?
I think from personal experience, I've been in a situation. I just think emotionally and mentally, it's less that you think about, but it does depend on how you think of when the life is formed or should be looked at as like a life that you
right. So
yeah.
I think is the big question, and that's where the disconnect is. But
what I'm saying is that's always going to be different for each person.
But I don't think that the subjective definition of life is how we define life, meaning that you being uncomfortable with a woman having an abortion in the 9th month, you're saying that just because you're uncomfortable with it, that doesn't mean that you should stop a woman from doing that. My point is that life has a definition, right? We all agree, for example, that a 1-month-old baby should not be drowned. Right? We all agree on that. And that's not up to the personal. Should not be drowned. You shouldn't take the baby and drown in a bathtub, right? And the question is, well, why? Because we now understand that the 1-month-old baby, everyone agrees with this, right? That except for Peter Singer at Princeton, that a 1-month-old baby has an independent interest in life, right? That is a life that is separate from the woman and requires protection. Okay, so if it is a life, then we now have an objective definition. It doesn't matter what the state of mind of the woman is. It doesn't matter if she thought, you know what, I have a really tough life. My life will be better off if this baby is drowned, if I don't have to deal with this baby, and so I'm going to drown the baby. The baby has an independent actual interest in living. And so,
you know what I really think it is? I think that women are so quick to go get abortions because they don't have to actually see the child. Like, it's completely different if you were to take the life of your child after they were born, right? Like he just said, a 1-month-old baby drowning in a bathtub is bad. But it's because you can actually see what you've done. You can see the body, you can see the baby, you can see the actual living being that you just destroyed. But whenever it's just inside of you, you can't actually see it. Like, you know what I mean? You can see little images of it. And I'm pretty positive that whenever they pull the baby out, they don't show it to the woman, be like, hey, look at this, look at the fetus, because that would do some mental scarring to them, And still, there's a ton of women out there that to this day regret their abortions, or they talk about having PTSD from it, or they have immense guilt or shame years later, 10, 15 years later after getting one. And it just never leaves their psyche. And there's a reason for that. It's because deep down, every human being knows in their soul, regardless if you can see the baby or not, that this is something that's supposed to be protected, and it's wrong to take the life of it. You can argue with me in the comments if you want to, but we know deep down that that's something that's just not, it's not right for us to be doing.
So the question becomes, is that true before birth? And I think for the vast majority of Americans are actually somewhere where you are practically, meaning that the vast majority of Americans do see in sort of a soft way a distinction between, the early stages of life, month 2 and 9 month, right? Like the approval in America of abortion at the very late stages is very, very low because most Americans.
It stops around like 4 or 5 months for most people, right?
Well,
like,
I mean,
most places.
most abortions are performed in the first trimester.
Yeah.
Yes. But the point that I'm making is that the law.
And that right there should tell you something. Like, why is that? Let's ask the question. Why are people more willing to do it whenever it's less developed? It's because they think that it's less of a human then. So they can dodge some accountability and some responsibility. Well, it wasn't fully developed, so they can use it almost as like an excuse, just to make themselves feel better as a means to cope.
That you're using allows for abortion, like literally right before the baby is born. And so then the question becomes, why is that okay? And it's not a woman's choice at that point, whether that is a life or not, because you don't get to artificially or subjectively define the meaning of things.
That. We're playing with semantics, though. But
yeah, that's what
it's not semantic. Either it's a life or it's not a life, right?
If your daughter was raped,
no,
it's almost like you're saying she's raped, but I'm gonna make her have this child.
No, I mean,
because you're saying you don't believe in abortion, even if rape and incest, right?
What I'm saying there is that I don't believe in abortion in cases of rape and incest. The practical effect is horrible. Okay, I'm not going to pretend that it is not emotionally horrifying, that particular situation. The question is whether it has an independent interest in life or not, and whether there's a third party involved. If you don't believe there's a third party deserving of protection, I totally get it. I get it. But we should understand that that's the actual conversation. The actual conversation is about whether you believe that this is an interested third party being. Do you get to kill that interested third party being, this human life with potential, or do you not? If you, and so the actual argument that I don't like is the idea that you can, that everybody, it's up to every single person to define when life begins and when life does not begin. That actually is not true, right? There's either a standard or there's not a standard. Now, you can say that life begins when the baby is independent of the mom. Okay? I think it's a very dicey biological argument, and I think most Americans agree with that life only begins when the baby exits.
I think it begins with a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's where most Americans are.
See, this is why it's so tricky. We as human beings don't get to decide when life begins. That's for the creator to decide, man. The moment that you find out that your woman is pregnant, or if you're a woman that you're pregnant and there's a human being developing inside of you, you should be thanking God. You should be saying, thank you so much for this blessing. And if you were sleeping around with random dudes, that's unfortunate. That's a consequence that you have to live with. But that should be a blessing from God. It shouldn't be something that you want to kill. When did we get to the point where we're willing to kill our own offspring? This reminds me of stuff in the Bible, bro, when people sacrificing their children to Moloch or Baal. It's just so demonic. It's so evil. I'm not ready to have a child yet, so I'm going to kill my own offspring. How insane is this? It's crazy to me, and I'll never understand it, ever. Well, actually, I could understand it if you're trying to preserve the life of the woman who is pregnant. That makes sense. You want to preserve the life that's already here. But other than that, I could just never understand that. That's the only exception, in my opinion. But I'm just a human. So whether my opinion is valid or not, it don't really matter. And y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section. I'm glad that Ben Shapiro came to the Breakfast Club and he stood on business. He stood on his principles and beliefs. And he wasn't willing to, shift just because of the people that he was surrounded with. But yeah, I'll go ahead and link this video in the description so you can check out the entire thing for yourself. Before you head out, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, man, that's it. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.